Tell me what your life was like before you died.
I actually had what's ruptured hernias, which I know is very unusual for little girls to have hernias at that age. But during my experiences, I was going through life-saving surgery. I do remember particularly the one, the first one I do remember being, laying on the couch, being under a blanket, and it was just so heavy, but that I couldn't even move it, and being really, really hot. I remember the doctor coming to the house, which they still did back in those days. And then, I remember going with my mom and dad, and the doctor went into the next room just to discuss, was I going to go to University of Iowa, or was I going to go to our local hospital? And I remember following them and just but up from the point of view of up by the ceiling and looking down at them. And then all of a sudden, I'm in this park with these trees, massive trees, way bigger than I'd ever seen. Now that I've seen pictures of the redwoods, I would equate them to that size. And I just remember being introduced to these three beings that I knew to be angels, and how I just knew it, but I did. And that's really about as much as I can remember of my first one, other than waking up. I remember waking up, one of my grandmothers was sitting at my bedside. I remember her reading, that she was reading a National Geographic, and the Pyramids of Giza were on there. And I just looked at her, and she didn't even know I'm awake yet. And then I look at her and say, "And where's the rest of them?" And she just looked at me funny. It's like, but yeah, even now we're now figuring out, even just in the last 2 or 3 years, that there's actually foundations of more of them on the plaza than you see today. There's just foundations left, a smaller one. The second one, I remember a lot more detail. I'm back in the same park with the same three beings, and it's like I hadn't even left. And I was one of those kids on the farm that if there was a nest of baby mice or snakes or rabbits or whatever, I found him, and I would just gently play with them and then put them right back where I found them. And so I was very connected to the animals at that time. And they asked me if I wanted to see the world through the eyes of the animals. So it's like they occupied my time or my energy while I was there, just kind of literally going from one animal to the next. And the next thing I know, I'm not on land anymore. I'm actually swimming. And I feel like I'm in this massive body size. It just felt really big. And then all of a sudden, I'm not swimming in the ocean or in the water anymore. I'm swimming in space. I'm swimming in the stars. And then I'm shown what's like, the best way I can describe it is like this big rush of energy from this central light source, where there's all the like souls being created, like the exhale of the creator, and all these souls come into being. And I'm watching that, I'm one of these souls. And I'm pulled, as me and two others are like pulled aside, and we're asked to become planet creators. Now I'm still trying to figure out fully what that means. And then we were shown on like these glass pads, is the best way I can describe it, because like there could be pictures on them, or it could be completely transparent. And it was a little bit bigger than the average computer screen. But we were shown like what it would be like if we did, and what it'd be like if we didn't. The other two beings chose to go on to the angelic realms. I obviously didn't, at least to become an angelic, but it's like I went there for training for a while, is the best way I can describe it. And that part of it is a little bit foggier. And I think it's because I'm either not yet ready to remember, or there's some things about that I'm not supposed to remember. I'm not sure. So I'm just being shown all these things in my NDE. And then I go back to this garden, and I had a whole bunch of questions. I don't remember all of the questions. And then just like as I asked questions and got the answers to what I was asking, it's like I became more and more back to my physical body at that time, where I even started asking questions about things I was being taught in Sunday school that didn't make sense to me. A little bit of both. It's like at the beginning, I was the 6-year-old, and then I kind of moved into a larger understanding, is the best way I can put it. And then as is it like the experience was kind of starting to come to an end, I went back to that 6-year-old again. The biggest one that I really remember is asking how long God's day was, because it didn't make sense to me that this massive being is the best way I could, can describe it in English. Day was the same size as ours. It's like that being was bigger, so their day must be bigger. And I used to get in trouble in Sunday school a lot for asking questions like that. The very small little Missouri Synod Lutheran church that I grew up in, wasn't prepared to be asked. And at that point, even most of my great-grandparents were still alive. I had 8 great-grandparents growing up, and I was up in, I do have 3 families. I understood them immediately to be angels. I just had that knowing, and how I saw them during that experience is still how I see them and how I draw them. I don't really remember making that decision. It was just like, I just did it. I just came back. I was just back. And I think that's probably about the time the anesthesia, was wearing off. From what I've been able to gather from my medical records, because they're kind of all over the place because we moved a few times. And I've only been able to get bits and pieces here and there of what actually happened. The letter that was written by the doctor who performed the surgery that went back to my to my doctor, where I lived, didn't really give it a lot of details. There was probably only 3 sentences even about the surgeries. Records of what happened during surgery or anything. It was just that this surgery happened on this date, and I'm the doctor that performed it. And that was basically it. From the mind of a 4 and 6-year-old, you don't really have the words to convey to your parents what you experienced. Did I try? Definitely. But it came out of what my dad called stories where, when I was a snake, when I was a rabbit, that was the best I knew how to describe it. Because even if I had heard such a word as near-death experience, it wasn't even coined yet for another 10 or 15 years. I remember my dad at one point did tell me to quit telling me those stories. So I just quit talking about it. When I came back, I saw my angels all the time then after that. So I just quit talking about seeing those things and the experience that I had. But it's like I wasn't completely disconnected from it, and I'm still not. But I was just able to see the angels then all the time after that. And to be honest, I really didn't understand for quite a while that everybody didn't experience what I was seeing. I don't really remember so much after the one at 4, but after the one at 6, I do remember clearly seeing them just there all the time, still are, just hanging out. Some of them are not so good about speaking English either. Because when they even communicate with each other, to me, it sounds more tonal, and it has more of a frequency and musical aspect to it. And they were supportive. After a while, I think I kind of got, so I almost ignored them, to be honest, because it's like you just take for granted that they're always there. I did eventually learn how to kind of turn the volume down a little bit, where I see them like more as like a sphere that kind of looks like a snow globe of color that's just constantly moving. Snow globe full of glitter is the best way I can describe it. One of my purposes in this lifetime is to help people feel more connected to the divine. And I think angels are a very common way that I think a lot of people can understand and can do that. And the definition of an angel for me is there are multidimensional beings made of light. And there are ones that even exist in different frequencies. And there's like archangels that kind of come and go as they're called upon and needed. And then we also have ones that are personal to us, that stay with us at all times. And my understanding and what they have shown me is that's separate, where it's extremely unusual for an angel to take physical form, have a physical lifetime, where spirit guides is just the opposite. It's almost like unusual that they don't. So there are things that angels understand better, and there are things that spirit guides understand better. Like time is totally different for an angelic being than it is for us having a physical experience. So your spirit guides understand time better. It's like I have this constant connection to the divine because of it. To me, I really don't remember life without it. So I think if I lost it, I'd have this big empty space. The main reasons that we're here and that our angels are here to support us is it's like we sit down with them like between lifetimes and we plan out, these are the things we want to experience. These are the lessons that we want to learn. And they help like line up those to learn those lessons. So for example, if one of the main things you need to learn is forgiveness, they'll put you in situation after situation after situation where you have to forgive somebody, maybe even yourself, until you get it. And sometimes, it's you feel like you've gotten the spiritual clue by four upside the head. I think we've all experienced that at one, with one lesson or another in our lifetimes. Change this habit, that habit, learn the lesson. Some people it's just to take better care of themselves, to realize that, we were given these essentially in a way energetic temples that we also need to honor them and take care of them, because a lot of times we abuse ourselves until we get 60 and something starts hurting, and then we realize, oh gee, and we think we're invincible. And it's like it's not just even what we're physically feeding our body, it's also can be what are we feeding our ears, what energetically, are we around people that are negative? Are we listening to the news and all that negativity and fear porn all the time? That affects us energetically, spiritually, and emotionally too. We need to, all things in moderation. In a lot of ways, I've had a pretty normal life. I've been married a couple times. I've got 4 great kids. I'm now a grandmother. I've done all the things that most of us have done. I had the corporate job for a number of years. I got out of that a few years ago. I was a web designer and developer for 14 years at one point. Lived actually a pretty normal life, because there was times I was not good about listening to them. So there was times I made things a little harder for myself than I needed to. It's like sometimes they're standing there pointing in a certain direction or illuminating a certain choice, and sometimes it's like, oh no, I want to go do this. Family members are not always from your same soul, your actual soul group. You don't always have that connection to them. The way I understand it, it's like groups of souls that were like created at the same moment or the same second, the same exhale. They were clustered together in some way, so they feel more connected to each other. It can also be people that think more in the same patterns, so they exist in the same, their thought patterns are in the same frequency. That old saying like attracts like, that's really all about frequency. Like if you have somebody that goes into one of those rooms that's completely blocking all light, sound, everything from the exterior, you're still going to hear 2 things. You're still going to hear your own nervous system and your own heart beating. That nervous system's because it puts off, your nerves actually puts off a frequency. So when you say somebody gets on your nerves, they really do, because your frequencies are so different that they don't, communication can be difficult. You think completely differently. It speeds, I think of it as faster, slower, more than higher, lower. I think that's a more accurate description. I think of them as pretty much the same thing. I really honestly put more weight on the spiritual than I do on the physical as a result of my experience. Sometimes that has served me very, very well. Other times it's made life a little more difficult, at least as far as a 3D reality. Because, sometimes things like finances can be a little more difficult understanding how that works, because that's a very 3D structure, a very 3D way of, looking at life and things. Sometimes I'm not very good at that part. The brain's wired a little bit differently. Family, friends, connections, making connections with other people. Those heart connections, I think, are some of the most important parts of life. Connecting others with the divine and helping people realize that there's more to life than what we can physically touch. Love does. That's the fastest frequency, at least from our perspective.